Hello and welcome to Tip the Footy, the site that is more than just tips. So today we're going to be having a few looks at what happened over the weekend in terms of the Premier League and a few of the talking points that have been that have arisen because of said events. So first of all, we're looking at Liverpool and Arsenal. They both maintained their 100% starts to the season, which is obviously very good if you're a Liverpool or Arsenal fan. Manchester City, the 2-2 draw with Spurs, although that didn't tell the entire story. Looking at Brighton against West Ham again, be lucky to escape with a point there. And I thought Aston Villa were quite unlucky not to gain a point in their home game with Bournemouth. Everton, back-to-back clean sheets. I think they've got the most clean sheets in 2019, I think. So they're looking really solid at the back. It's definitely an area they've definitely improved. If they can start getting Moise Keane or, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, someone who can start banging the goals in the other end, they could become quite a dangerous side and make an assault in the top six this season. So the first thing we want to discuss, though, is VAR. Now, a lot of people are split on VAR, and people think it's a great idea, and other people think it's ruining the game. And I'm kind of in between. I understand there is a lot of negativity towards it. I think also, though, you've got to look at the rule change for handball. Now, the Manchester City denied winner to make it 3-2 against Spurs. Disallowing goals for that, I don't really like. Now, I'm obviously a Liverpool fan, so I want Man City to drop as many points as possible to give Liverpool the best possible chance of winning the Premier League. But also, as a realist, if that had happened to us, I'd have been really disappointed with it. I think it's one of them things that you see happening and you probably take a bit of joy from it for a few minutes. But then when you look at the reality and think, well, if that had happened to us, would I have been happy with that? And the answer is absolutely no. There was nothing intentional about it, and I know that there's a rule change, and I understand that is going to have a massive impact, but I don't think the rule's a very good one. Deliberate handball, things like that. If your arms are, all over the place, then yeah, fair enough. Give handball. If you have made yourself bigger, all that kind of stuff, then definitely give handball. But I don't fancy it. I didn't like that. Obviously, that's not necessarily VAR's fault. It's the rule change's fault. However, VAR was at fault for not giving Manchester City a penalty earlier in the game. VAR again, I know, with what would have been Brighton's opener. We're discussing ridiculous margins here, and I understand that there's a black and white side to it, but there are grey areas, and it is taking a little bit something away from the game. I think it's a lot harder to just celebrate, and be right in the moment when you're constantly in the back of your mind thinking, hang on, is this going to get disallowed? Have I missed something in the build-up? I was under the impression that VAR was in for clear and obvious errors. Now, if the penalty for City in the first half wasn't a clear and obvious error, why are they not going back and giving that? Clear and obvious is one thing, and I think that should be all it should be used for, clearing up mistaken identity, making sure that no one is, offside, and for making sure that referees get the decisions right in terms of penalties. But I think if you've got enough referees in a room, I think it's at Stockley Park, why are they not calling up and saying, look, maybe go and take a look at this? There's not enough going to the screen, which I know would then slow the game down. But if you want to get the right decision, then go for the right decision. You can't have, we'll try and get the right decision most of the time, but then other occasions we'll try and let the game flow. You've got to make a choice. I prefer no VAR, if I'm honest. I know a lot of people were saying, last season, that as soon as VAR comes in, Liverpool are going to end up 9th or something. The reality is, VAR will eventually favour the bigger sides because the bigger sides attack more. So therefore, there is more opportunities for them to go down in the box. There's more opportunities for them to win penalties. I mean, it's more often than not going to eventually favour the larger, more attack-minded teams. However, I'm not keen on the technology. I think at the World Cup it was okay. I think it added something to the World Cup, I think, the last time round. But I think when it comes to domestic football, and I think that most of the time domestic football is a much bigger, more close to most people's hearts than international football. I think a lot of the time it can be quite boring until you get to World Cups and European Championships, Copa Americas and things like that. But I don't. I'm not for VAR. Obviously, you might have very different comments on that. I'm sure a lot of Spurs fans are massively pro VAR at the minute. However, I would take that with a pinch of salt, because the minute that it happens to a Spurs side who are trying to win a game and something like that comes up, I imagine that opinion will flip-flop throughout the season. But whatever your opinions and thoughts are on VAR, get them in the comments below, and we'll definitely have a chat about them either here or go over to the Twitter page and have a little chat on there about it. So that was one of the most important things. I thought from a Liverpool point of view in the Liverpool game, I think they did really well against Southampton, even though they were under the cosh at times. Adrian made an absolute howler, but these things happen, unfortunately. However, the best part about that was it didn't cost us any points. I thought Southampton played really well. They really did play really well. I don't think that they necessarily deserved to get beat. I think it was a couple of quality finishes from Liverpool. But we obviously let them get back in the game, so the last 10 minutes were a bit shaky. As we said, Everton doing really well. Arsenal, I've seen Arsenal before, the last few seasons, when they concede a goal like that, like they did against Burnley, that they've struggled to sort of get themselves going again and have ultimately either lost the game or drawn it. So there is a new desire and a new galvanising effect, I think, that Emre's brought into Arsenal now, and I think the players that they've signed, I think they're looking really good, and they should be pushing for top 4, and I expect them to get there. Other than that, as I said before, I thought Villa were unlucky. I thought they played pretty well. Still a bit too open at the back, but I think that'll come in time. The Sunday games didn't give us a lot, really. I think Chelsea, it's one of them games where Chelsea could have won it quite comfortably if they had, they could have been 3-0 up in the first 10 minutes. I think Leicester sort of weathered the storm to a certain degree, and they looked the better team towards the end. I think they probably got half each. I think you'd probably give the first half to Chelsea, the second half to Leicester. So ultimately, a draw is probably a fair result. And Sheffield United, I think they beat Palace purely by desire and effort. I didn't see a lot of effort from Crystal Palace, and I think if you're a Crystal Palace fan, you're probably going to be looking at that and thinking, is this what it's going to be like all season? Because they're a decent side when they start playing the ball and going for the game, going for the throat. But they just didn't seem to have much interest in what they were doing. Now, whether that's tactics, whether it's the whole Zaha situation over the summer that's kind of disrailed their pre-season a little bit, maybe they'll start putting a run of results together. I don't know, but there is definitely a lack of desire from what I saw from Palace, particularly yesterday. Not so much in the Everton game, but definitely yesterday. Then obviously, if you look at the Norwich games or on the Saturday as well, Timu Pukki. Now, I said in one of the earlier videos that if he was able to replicate the goal scoring form he got from the Championship, however, I thought it'd be difficult to do so. But if he does do that, he's going to go a long way to giving Norwich a very, very good season. If he can rack up between 15 and 20 goals, I think that's going to put them at least safe, if not challenging for the 15th, 16th, 12th down to sort of 16th spots. Newcastle looked awful. They just had no idea. I mean, a lot of the players on the pitch seem to be questioning each other, like, what have we got to do? And look, I don't want to bang on about Rafa Benitez because that ship has obviously sailed, but I can see a lot of Newcastle fans finding it more increasingly difficult and frustrating as the season goes on. Look, I'm not going to rule out that Steve Bruce might not keep them up or do something good with them, because there is always that possibility. But however, I don't think that Newcastle are looking at it at all. Obviously, it's very early days, though. These are quite obvious knee-jerk responses to what we've just recently watched. The most recent, essentially there's a recency bias on what we've just seen. But I would hold a lot of fear if I was a Newcastle supporter right now. So other than that, Monday Night Football came along. Now, one of the key talking points in that was obviously who should be taking penalties. And I agree with most Manchester United fans on this. I do believe that it should be Rashford taking the penalties, particularly after scoring one in the opening weekend of the season. I think Manchester United come down to earth with a bit of a bump, though. I think if you look at the result against Chelsea, it was 4-0, but it was never really a 4-0, was it? I mean, on balance of play, it was nothing like that. And I think that can get people carried away. I think the reality is there's still a lot to work to be done at Manchester United. I think they've strengthened some good areas, right back, centre back. I still think they lack a little bit going forward. And obviously we're not 100% sure how happy Pogba is either, so there is always that could creep in throughout the season. But they've done some good business. But I think they remind me a lot of Liverpool from a few years ago. You get a really good result, then you get a bad one, and the positivity's there, it goes away, it's there, it goes away. It is a very difficult situation to be in. But however, Man United, they're one of these teams that will ultimately always succeed at some stage. But I just think it's part of a rebuilding process, and it's going to take longer than just the transfer window to sort that. It does take a couple, particularly and it takes a couple if you buy right. If you buy wrong, it can set you back a couple of windows just trying to get rid of what you bought. So there is always that issue. But one of the biggest things to come out of last night's game, though, was the ridiculous and disgusting racism that was labelled, that was put towards Paul Pogba. It's just disgusting. I mean, what is the point? I mean, we are now living in 2019, and the racism shouts being this prevalent are just disgusting. Now, what I don't like is the whole it's all or nothing situation. So a lot of people seem to are coming out, oh, Manchester United fans are now racist, the same way as Chelsea fans were supposed to be racist. The reality is there's a group of fans for every single club who are absolute arseholes, and they'll be racist. They'll say things for likes and retweets, or they'll say things to be edgy, or they'll say things to get a reaction and things like that. So there is a group of people who do that. Now, there's no law on who you can support, so unfortunately, every fan base has its fair share of utter dickheads. Now, the best thing to do with that is obviously be more self-policing, because when people are liking it and retweeting these kind of tweets, it just gives fire, it gives fuel to the fire, and it shouldn't exist. So rather than retweet them, block them, report and block them. Just make sure you take a stand. By retweeting them, it gives other people ideas, and then it gives people the ability to go, well, you did this, but look what your team did, and all that kind of stuff. And it's just irrelevant. The fact is, racism is wrong. Everyone should know that by now. That shouldn't be an issue regarding race. And the fact that we're still talking about racism in 2019 is just a disgrace and a real blot on the human race. We are human beings, for fuck's sake. Let race go. It's just not necessary to be racist. Both ways, anyway, to any race, religion, anything. Just leave it as it is. You don't have to be calling people out based on the colour of their skin. It's just insane. It doesn't matter if he misses a penalty. The fact he misses a penalty, yeah, you can call him shit. You can call him a fraud. You can call him overrated. You can call him overpriced. But you don't have to call him names based on the colour of his skin. It just doesn't make any sense. Football banter is one of the most funny and engaging things you can get when it comes to just having little digs at each other's teams and all being like a friendly banter situation. But racism is absolutely wrong, and there is no friendly banter in racism. It should be outlawed, and hopefully the people that are responsible for it will stamp down on it. Hopefully the more the punishment exists, then there's less of an incentive to do it. But obviously, when you see these kind of things, just report them, block them, and move on. Don't give them oxygen, by putting them out there for everyone else to see, because all it does is it just gives, like I said, other people ideas, and it just perpetuates more and more of the racism, more of the one-upmanship between fans going, well, your fans did this, your fans did that. We're aware of racist incidents across all fan bases. The fact is, it shouldn't exist, so it doesn't matter if Chelsea fans did it. So then Man United fans can say, oh, well, Chelsea fans did it, because that's just not an excuse. The same vice versa. It just doesn't matter. At any football club, it should be outlawed. And unfortunately, the fact that it still exists is an absolute disgrace. So over on the Twitter page, we put out a few tweets just to see if anyone's got any questions they want to ask regarding football, obviously round this weekend and over the course of the season. So one of our big contributors was at Nightlord_FTW. Believe he's a Spurs fan. Lots of got a few good questions coming in from him. So the first one was, who do you think will be the most underrated and overrated signings of this window? Now, for overrated, and I don't want to upset Arsenal fans here, because I mean this for this season. So I think the most overrated signing of the season so far will be Pepe. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because I don't believe that the transition is going to happen within this first 12 months. I think it'll start coming good towards the end of the season. But I think next season you'll really see a much more improved player. It just takes a little bit of time sometimes to get used to the English league. I think Liverpool had something similar with Naby Keita, who's expected to come in and blow the world away. And unfortunately, due to a combination of injuries, maybe not getting enough game time, and just adapting to a different culture and lifestyle and way of playing, it can have a negative effect on your football. I think I'm convinced Naby Keita is going to become good and become one of the better players in the Premier League. The same way I think Pepe will too, but I think it's going to take just this season to sort of bed in, get used to everything that he's doing. That's not me saying he's a bad player. I think he's an absolutely fantastic player, and I'm delighted to see him in the league. I would just not get on his back too much if this season doesn't go according to plan. So I think he's going to be the most overrated, but based on what I've just said. So for underrated signings, I'm going to go for Aston Villa's Trezeguet. I think that early games, I mean, he looks like he gets himself in dangerous positions, but I think he's going to contribute a lot in the terms of assists. I think he's going to be very vital to Aston Villa's hopes of staying up. I think he's a really good player. I actually quite like him, but I've not heard a lot about him being spoken about in like a massive positive way or whatever. So I'm going to go with Trezeguet at Villa. I think he's probably would be underrated as in terms of he's not been hyped, but will actually turn out to be like a really good signing. The other one I would say, and this is without bias, but I think a really good deal that was done this window was Harry Wilson on loan at Bournemouth. I think it gives him a chance to prove that he can do it in the Premier League, but I also think it gives Bournemouth a chance to see what he's about, and actually could become quite useful in terms of their assists and the ability to score from outside the box. So, but I'm going to go with Trezeguet, but I think Wilson's a very good, a clever signing for Bournemouth. So Nightlord also asked, what team will be this season's dark horse? Now, before the season, I would have gone with someone like like a Leicester and Everton, someone like that. But based on the entire season, I think it's got a great chance of being Norwich City. I think tipped by most to go down. They've started the season really well. I mean, they weren't bad at Anfield. The scoreline suggests otherwise, but they'd have took their chances. You could have had a 4-3 on your hands. I think that's definitely a positive for them because they didn't change their style of play. They kept going the way that they've been playing all season. I think to win well at home, and if they make their home a fortress, pick up the points away, then Norwich could be very, very, very much a very strong and exceptionally good dark horse this season. It's definitely one to watch out for. The other team I'd probably mention would be Brighton, because I had them to finish bottom, but I think maybe Potter's got other ideas. And certainly they look like a side who could definitely take quite a few points this season as well. But I'll go with Norwich, but with a little second favourite being Brighton, I'd say, on that score. He also asks, do you think Ndombele and Lo Celso will succeed? Yeah, absolutely. I really like Giovanni Lo Celso. Like I said, I saw him a lot from Real Betis. I didn't see enough of him at PSG, but I did see him a lot at Betis. I think he's a very, very good player. He's very skillful, low centre of gravity, tactically very good. He's got an excellent finish on him. I actually really rate Giovanni Lo Celso. I think with Ndombele, I think he'll definitely succeed. I think he started the season really well. I think he's also a player that Tottenham were kind of crying out for, which will definitely enhance their hopes going forward. I don't think we'll have a title push this season, but certainly, top three. Yeah, I think they'll both be massive successes. I've got no problems with them both being big successes, and I think Lo Celso will eventually make his deal move to Tottenham permanent. So his last question was, is VAR taking the emotion out of football? It depends how you define emotion, really. If you're talking about the ecstasy when you score and you're cheering and you're happy that your team's just scored, only for VAR then to remove that joy, then yeah, it is. But then if you think about the anger that people have because of VAR and the annoyance that VAR brings, as in the Wolves fans last night singing, was it "Fuck you VAR" or "Fuck VAR"? Sorry, they that's an emotion. It's just a negative one. So yeah, it may be taking out some of the positive emotions associated with football, but I think it's absolutely ramping up the negative ones. So is it taking emotion out of the game? No, based on the fact that it's causing a lot more negative emotion than positive. And just briefly as well, Quick shout out to AAAFC69, massive Arsenal fan, really good account. Definitely check that out and give her a follow. She's absolutely awesome. Another one is Nicole at United She Stands. Definitely check her out. She's had a bit of a problem with her tooth, so go and give her a follow and send her some well wishes. And last but not least, go and check out the Footy Stato, or the Stato. His name's Footy Stato, but it's at the Stato. Really good account, very new, loads of good football stats. So if you're into stats and you like seeing a bit of a mad fact, definitely want to take a look at. Obviously, don't forget, we're still doing the FIFA giveaway, which is over on the Twitter pinned tweet. Go and retweet that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and get yourself a chance to win that. Anything that you'd like us to discuss in future videos, give us a shout. The blog will be up later on this evening, or early evening, with all the predictions. Well, not so much predictions, but tips for the Championship games tonight. There's a few Champions League games as well. But yeah, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's a quick recap of what we saw of the course of the weekend. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to subscribe to our channel, give us a like and comment down below. It's always a pleasure to have you here, and we hope to speak to you again soon. I'm Dante. Take care.